allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being live streamed by Chelmsford Telemedia for interested community members to access and watch. Interested community members may email the superintendent of schools on the day of the meeting in order to register to speak at tonight's open session. For the first one, to address any issues that are on the agenda, and for the second public input session, to address any other items. Do we have anybody registered tonight?
We don't.
Okay. Then with that, I will take a motion to approve our agenda from October 3rd.
Make a motion to accept the minutes from our meeting on October 3rd.
Second.
Right, were there any corrections or questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Okay, our Chelmsford High student representatives are here. I can model these for you if you want, when you're ready, okay? Okay, so what good news do you have for us?
So some colleges that have visited the high school include Bentley University, Fitchburg State, St. Joseph's College, Allen College of Engineering, Montserrat College of Art, and Dean College. And CHS clubs and activities are in full swing. CHS Picture Retakes will be November 9th. Late buses after school began today, and student flu vaccines will be happening on October 18th.
On October 28th is the seniors' Halloween dance, and that's at the high school. And our unified basketball team had their first win of the season with a win against North Andover. Congratulations. And keeping social and emotional learning in mind, Miss Gover's Studio Art 2 students created coloring books for adults. Coloring books for adults has become very popular. They help reduce stress, reduce anxiety, improve focus and relaxation. Each student designed 2 pages and chose the titles and cover designs. And these books were distributed during the open house.
These are really nice. They did a really excellent job. Now, do you have a page in here?
I don't take an art class.
Oh, okay, I was just wondering. How about you? Do you have a page in here? No. Oh, all right.
Sadly not.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Good news?
I think we're sharing the good news tonight. If anybody has anything they'd like to make for an announcement. If not, our good news is in the audience tonight with some of our presenters.
Mostly good news. Just kidding.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dr. Lane? We have no public.
Sure. Nope, so we'll move right to new business. As we talked about at our previous meeting, we're going to change some of our public presentations this year to focus on one of the elements of the strategic plan over the course of the first meeting of each of the months. So tonight, we have the first element, which is the academic achievement group. This is on their steering committee. We have our first meeting actually later in the week to get overall up to speed with what we're doing for the plan for this year. But Linda and her group are going to talk a little bit about the academic achievement subcommittee and some of the work that they're doing this year in their particular content area. So I will turn it over to Linda.
Thank you for having us. So yes, we will be talking about one of the 5 priority areas this evening, which is academic achievement. The first thing I'd like to do is actually introduce you to some of our members from the academic achievement subgroup, as well as, if you look at the slide, some of the other members. So this evening, we have with us Dr. Jeffrey Parks. He is the principal at McCarthy Middle School. We have Dr. Matthew Bayronovan. He's the mathematics department coordinator for the district. And we have Kelly Rogers, who is our reading, ELL, and Title I department coordinator. So this is almost like a subgroup of the subgroup that's here to just talk about academics. So as many of you have heard, we've talked a lot about our strategic planning. We do have 5 priority areas. We are starting off with the first priority area, which is academics. You know, the purpose of schools, we try to educate our students. And you'll be hearing from the other groups of equity, social emotional learning, human capital and staff, and operations and facilities as we go along. And a lot of this came from our theory of action, what our belief system was in the school district. We have been focusing a lot on our reading programs. We've put in a lot of efforts and professional development around reading, and we wanted to shift that focus to mathematics with the same process of new curriculum, new pedagogy that goes along with that curriculum, and some of the supports that we have in academics. That does not mean that we are not teaching about reading anymore or any of our other subject areas. It's just that this is where we're putting our focus in for our district. And as we go along with some of the activities that we're doing with our teachers through the initiatives, we are also measuring those achievements through looking at our percentage of annual growth for student growth based on MCAS, which we receive the results every fall. And in the meantime, because you don't want to just wait for summative data, you also want to be having real-time data, and we use iReady, which is a diagnostic system, which gives us 3 benchmarks through the year and also a MyPath for the students so that they can practice in addition to their lessons from their teachers on those standards. So we are looking at the percentage of third grades meeting the standards in reading based on iReady, because reading is fundamental and you need that in order to be successful also in math and your other subject areas, as well as how our third graders are meeting the standards in mathematics, and then percentage of our 8th graders meeting the standards in math with iReady as well. So the reading is blended in there because by the time students get to 3rd grade, that's when we hopefully have a very good foundation of reading, and we push them for reading for learning. Make sense a little bit? Okay, great. And from the strategic plan and within our priority area, we are focusing on these 4 initiatives. So we last year piloted the new math programs, made a decision moving forward with our current math programs. We have Reveal Math and Big Ideas Math. And then we're implementing the benchmarks in iReady and identifying the improvement areas for students. We're going to continue with Panorama is the platform, but they are called dashboards, and they're academic dashboards that now our teachers have access to in order to make database, decision-making ideas. So it's not just with the administrators anymore. The teachers actually have access to their students district-wide. And then we are looking at the schedules at, obviously at the middle school, because that's our big reconfiguration, but we're also looking at any schedules in order to maximize student learning time. Okay? And with us this evening, what we're going to do is break off with our presenters this evening to talk a little bit about each one of these initiatives. And we're starting off with Dr. Bayronovan, and he'll be talking about the implementation of our new math curriculum K through 12.
Great, thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Hirsch. And before we get into this first initiative, what I would like to share is being in this district for 12, 13 years, I've been through quite a few iterations of these strategic plans on a district level. And I firmly believe that this has been the most successful development of a strategic plan that we have had, at least during my time here, mainly because there was every part of the stakeholders involved in the process, as well as the fact that we have clear initiatives of what we need to do and how it's going to be measured. And it's something that I have now, as the mathematics department coordinator, been able to use to tie to my own goals as a department and as an individual through the educator evaluation plan, and as well as to make suggestions for the teachers within my department to link their own personal student learning and professional practice goals to these strategic goals. So really, I feel like for the first time since we've been doing strategic planning, really everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what the initiatives are, what the expectations are, and it's really, I think, worked well so far. And if for no other reason, mathematics has finally become the focus within the district, taking a back seat to the reading and the ELA, which has dominated for so many years. So if for no other reason, that has made me very excited. So our first initiative, as you can see, is the idea of having a new math curriculum K through 12. And my job this evening is to kind of share with you a little bit about what has been done related to the strategic plan and what is going to be done. So background information, as some of you might already know, is that we went through a one-year process of evaluating our current curriculum at the K through 12 level, as well as determining through pilots and other measures what new curriculum we will be using for this current year, the academic 2023-24 year. For the elementary level, we knew that it was time to move on from our math expressions program, and so we went through a pilot program with a full committee of members of both the teaching staff at every school, as well as different leaders within the buildings, to come down to 2 programs in which we did a full pilot last year that lasted about 4 to 5 months, and the overwhelming majority voted to do the Reveal Math program. And so because we did not decide that until the end of the year, we were unable to do full training for every teacher in the district prior to the end of the school year. So what we did, which was an idea that actually Dr. Hirsch had, which was we spent some time over the summer to bring in teacher leaders, 1 per each team per grade level, to get the full training experience for Reveal, so that they come into the year that at least 1 member of the team has had the full training experience. So that if there are little questions to start the year and someone has not been fully trained, there was a leader within the building, in addition to our elementary math coach, Ann Swisbin, as well as myself. There were optional trainings that teachers could do over the summer, but nothing that we were requiring. We had our first training of the year for our entire K-5 staff in September at our first early release professional development. And for those people that had not been trained before, for those teachers in particular, they had that same initial first training. For those teachers that were either part of the pilot program or were part of that initial training over the summer, they received the second part of the training program, focusing less on the fundamentals of how to use the program and more about how you differentiate, use the technology, second level learning. We have another training that will be coming for the Reveal in January for all K through 5 teachers. And then there will be an additional training at the end of the year, which I'm going to be leading with the teachers, more as a reflection on how the experience went for this first year, where we have to try and experience it, and then what changes we're going to make for the second year going forward the next year. So part of the work that we did do, as evidenced in our action plan, was that we spent part of the summer developing pacing guides for each of the levels. These pacing guides we know would not be perfect in the beginning because we have to first live it before we're able to actually truly be able to come up with an accurate pacing guide. But what we wanted to do was take the suggestions made by the company McGraw-Hill, as well as talking to the teachers who piloted the program, and come up with a pacing guide so that we can have similar experiences and expectations in all the classrooms, regardless of who your teacher is in whatever school. We don't try to micromanage it that everybody has to be on the exact same lesson, but a general time frame of what we're doing, what we're covering, and what sort of common assessments we're going to be having. And that process will continue into next summer once everybody has lived the program for 1 year, and we will be revising that as well to just kind of update how long things take, how much time we spend on the different chapters and units, what sort of review things need to happen, again, after we've lived it for a year. And then the next is we need to figure out, after we've done it, lived this program for the first year, what sort of professional development do we need going forward? We all know that you cannot expect people to become an expert immediately. It's something that professional development needs to be done in a long, extended period of time. As educators grow with a program and understand it better, more questions come out. So we are going to continue to support all the teachers in the program, not just in the initial training or the first year, but also going forward. And also, we want to make sure that it is a shared experience by all of the educators within the building, because it's more than just the classroom teachers. And finally, we have a intervention program that is done through Title I that occurs at some of our elementary schools and our middle schools.
And it is a nice segue to transition from this introduction to this initiative number 1 to share with our reading, Title I intervention coordinator, programmer, Kelly Rogers, who can share a little bit about the interventionist and then lead into initiative number 2.
Sure. Like Matthew mentioned, mathematics is a focus this year and moving forward. And so when we met, we thought we would really utilize additional mathematics interventionists at the middle school level this year. So we've hired 2 mathematics interventionists at the Parker Middle School. And then we have 1 mathematics interventionist, 7-8, still 1 job pending. Hopefully we'll get another one. But the focus, again, is around the mathematics and for students who are just working below benchmark, who kind of just need that extra boost and need that additional, kind of like an extra support system. If they're not mastering the standards within the classroom, then they're getting to revisit those with another individual, whether it be in the classroom or outside of the classroom with a small group instruction. So that's kind of what the focus is for our Title I interventionists. And like Matthew said, we have them both at the elementary level, but at the middle school level as well this year. And moving into the action initiative number 2, in talking about how we're using the benchmark assessments to kind of lead us and just using that data and that information to kind of strategize and to what we need. So what we've done, like Matthew said, we kind of met through all last year and over the summer to come up with these action items. And one of the initiatives was around iReady and thinking about, how important it would be for students to know what iReady is about and to be having them set their own goals, student goals around, where are they and how have they grown over time. So really talking to teachers about sharing this data with students about where are they at and where, what is their growth like. So important piece of really involving students in their goal setting and not it just being something that teachers are a part of. And then the other thing we do, we're all a part, and like Matthew said, it's at the school level, the district level, department coordinators, principals, we are really all focused on meeting about the data. And so I know at the building levels and department meetings, the teachers are really taking a close look at the iReady data and what does this mean for students and how can they strategically support each student individually. And iReady really lends itself so nicely because, like we've mentioned many times, students are they're going on their own pathway, right? Based on what their needs are, based on what the diagnostic is telling them. And so we're able to kind of focus and kind of fine tune what they need, and teachers can assign lessons to the students, and they can, dig a little bit deeper and go a little bit more granular with what the students' needs are. So those data meetings are really helping the teachers help the students. And so those are happening throughout the year. And another thing that we've put into place and I think has been very successful is, sometimes we don't have time, right? It gets away from us, but we have set aside for every testing window in the fall, winter, and spring, we've set aside time for the leadership team to get together with the iReady consultants. We have consultancy leadership meetings 3 times a year, and each building principal and assistant principal is involved with this, and they take a look to see at their school-wide data, and they take a look to see, well, where are we doing well, and what challenges are we facing, and kind of come up with some action items then. Because like I said, it's really hard as a building principal to kind of find that time. So we've really carved that out 3 times a year. And that seems to be working very well. So another action item, if I could see this, that would be great, but I really can't. So I like that report. Okay, this is also an initiative that we put forward last year. This is good practice, and we should be doing this, but it came about because the Department of Education, DESE, is telling us that we really need to report out our ELA data to students, to parents K through 3 about any student who is working below benchmark. And wouldn't it be a great idea just to report out to all parents about student progress? And so iReady, thankfully this year, this is just wonderful, because last spring we printed out every report and it was quite cumbersome, but iReady now has this wonderful feature that the parents can actually go on to their students' iReady site, and they put in a security code, because the information obviously needs to be secure, and they're able to access a family report that really outlines where their students are and how they've grown over time. So they'll initially get a report in the fall, in the winter, in the spring, and it's just a nice visual, a bar graph of where their students are at and where they've gone. And it also, what is really nice, it speaks in terms where parents can help their students, and gives them ideas about, here's some strategies that you can work on at home around number sense and operations, or vocabulary, or comprehension, or whatnot. So those iReady reports, I think, are an integral part of, again, that process of just making sure that we're all working towards the same goal, and we're communicating with parents about student progress, and we're all working together towards that end goal of progress. All right, Matthew, what does the last one say?
Great. Well, the last one is, if you don't mind, I will jump in on that.
Oh, no, the standards master.
Yes, standards
Okay,
master. Go ahead.
standards master.
You want to do it?
Sure.
Okay, great.
So another one of our goals is to hone in on standards mastery, which is another feature of iReady. And as an admin team, we're going to be involved with some professional development around this new feature of standards mastery. And what it is, it's just, I apologize.
No, it's not you.
You have to get closer to the mic.
Just get a little closer to
Closer,
her.
okay. So the standards mastery, we don't have a lot of information around it now, because the admin team is going to engage in some professional development this year. But I know it's kind of allows teachers to just give a quick assessment for students to see how is their teaching relating to the actual standards, the state standards that are expected of students. So it's going to kind of give them a quick guide as to where the students are at. So again, just making sure that we're providing that rigor in the classroom, and teachers are knowing where our students are at.
And just to follow up on that, the two things from my perspective that I really like about the iReady. Number one is they provide us with some very high correlational data about the use of the iReady program and the tying it to the MCAS scores, or any state standardized scores. And they had something like 2 or 3 million students each year using their program, and it was something like a 0.85 correlation to what they would get on their summative state tests. So we know that this is very much tied to our MCAS tests, and if students are using the program, they are much more likely to be proficient or better on the state test. The second thing is this idea of the My Pathway, where teachers do not need to focus on differentiating the lessons for the students. It does it automatically for them. So we realize, for example, Linda really struggles with place value. We know that. And we know that Jay has trouble with his shapes. I don't have to create separate lessons for them. It automatically does that for them based how they did on the diagnostic tests. Teachers can assign the same lesson for everybody if it ties to what we're doing in the curriculum, but the My Pathway, which we recommend for 45 minutes a week, is something that is based specifically on how each student did on their assessment that they do 3 times a year.
So we're moving back to me, and then even with the iReady program, what's nice about it too is even if a student is struggling with a specific standard and the teacher needs something in addition to, there's the toolbox where there's at least upwards of 5 different lessons on that standard. So it's really helpful as a teacher not to have to go and create the lesson and then administer the lesson. There's some place you can go and use it. So people can pick and choose what works for the students that are in front of them. So it's very helpful. But what helps us with that as well is we have the iReady data, we have MCAS data, and what was happening, and this has been, I think these guys will probably agree, maybe 4 years I've been working on dashboards because it's really hard for teachers to have to log into this system to get this information. Then you log into another one to get some more information, and oh, here's a third one, and I can't remember my password. I mean, it gets very cumbersome. I mean, even, I'm sure all of us have our spreadsheets of all of our passwords that have to be changed regularly. So one of the goals was to, how can we put all of the information into one place so that we can at least have an overview of what is happening with students. So I will probably be able to show you, maybe at a later date, I could do some redacting to give you an idea what the platform looks like, but I'm just going to describe it for now. So Panorama works, of course, I can see every school, but teachers can see their classrooms, principals can see their schools. It gives them these bars of how students are doing academically, how they're doing behaviorally, what their attendance looks like. So you could go across the board and they put it color-coded, so red, things aren't going so well. Yellow, we gotta watch out. Green, life is going well, kids are doing well. So you can go right across the board to say, oh, something's not right here because I see yellow, and you can dig into what's that yellow. Oh, well, they're not coming to school. There's an attendance issue. But their grades are really good, or they're not coming to school and their grades aren't so great. So you're trying to find those correlations. Now, if you want to dig very, very deep into something, you would have to go back into the program. So if you see that they're not doing well on their assessments, you would have to then go into iReady to find out exactly what standards they might be struggling with. But this is just a great place to be able to find all the information and make it visualized for administrators and teachers to say, I better check in on this child. I better find out what's going on with this class. As a district, you could be like, wow, that's odd. One school seems to have low attendance. Should we take a look at that? Or is there something happening with the academics? What happens for the middle schools and the high school is they have the grades, so it's feeding right from our Aspen system every evening. So every time teachers are putting in those grades, we start to see it populate. When the elementary schools, they do standards-based report cards, so their first marking period is not until November. So once those are in there, we'll be able to see if there seems to be some, correlations or issues that might be happening at the elementary level as students are learning their standards. So it's I love it because it's a good visual, but what's really great is that we launched it with the teachers at the end of last year, and it was kind of like a soft launch, right? Log in, take a look at it. Principals did it at their faculty meetings. Some people jumped right on it, and then other people, were like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to log into what? So after a while, this past year, everybody has had their new logins and new students. The high school did a great PD session on their first PD day. They did a rotation with the teachers. They learned about the SEL portion of it. They learned about the academic portion about it. And they're really jumping on it. And the reason I really know that the teachers are on there is, I can see the usage. But I'm getting a lot of emails like somebody's like, oh, my name changed. I can't log on to my Panorama. Oh, I was having trouble. I can't see these kids. So I can tell that the teachers are really on the system without having to look at a usage chart. They're contacting us to find out why something isn't working, and it's coming up in a lot of conversations. They use it for the SST system, so when they're looking and evaluating a student that might need services, teachers are just talking about it like, well, how are they doing in this? Did you look on their iReady? So it also gives them their MCAS scores. They will give them their attendance, and then we have DIBELS and FMP scores for the elementary level. So that is all in that system. And what I can do is I just have to look at the redacting so it's not so redacted. Just to give you an idea of what it looks like for a visual, I could be certainly happy to put something together for you. So we're just making sure that the current usage is there, and teachers are looking at the data to help set their goals, to help see how their students are doing, and then to dig into the data a little bit more to see what changes they might need to make in the future, so that we're not always waiting for summative data and then going, oh, let's go backwards and figure out how to fix this. How can we just be constantly working on it?
Can teachers only see students' information for that current year, or can they go back?
They can go, so we have last year's data, and now we have this year's data, so we have 2 years' worth.
Okay.
So they can go back if they toggle back. Only the students, so it gets a little funky for teachers, because if you didn't have those students, like you only can see your current students now this year and last year, they can't go back and see other students that they just may not have in their classes. Like a high school teacher You know how sometimes you have them for certain classes? If you don't have them in your class, but you had somebody, like if Maria was in my class last year, but I don't have her this year, I can't see Maria. I can only see the students that I have in front of me right now, current year and last year.
Okay.
I can go back and pull all the students, but a teacher couldn't.
Right, I was just wondering if teachers had the ability to be able to go and see any patterns that would be happening over a couple of years.
Yes.
For the
they-
current students that they have.
Yes, so
Okay.
yes, for the current students, they could do that. So last year was the first year we had Panorama, so we have 2 years' worth of data. Next year, we'll have 3.
Okay.
They can go back, it's a 3-year look back.
Okay, thank you.
Are you okay with that, if I ask a question? Sure. So from your presentations so far, it seems like the interventionist role is a very important role in what we're trying to achieve here. And are we fully staffed right now on interventionists?
Well, we're looking for one more reading
One more,
interventionist at the middle,
Another reading at
the middle school.
Parker,
Yeah.
and then math interventionist at
Okay.
McCarthy.
So I've had a couple of questions from parents about this after the MCAS presentation. So if the student didn't meet expectations, needs intervention, needs help, at what level do you determine, okay, this student does need this intervention? And is it across the board, you've decided, okay, if a third grader only scored 400 whatever, then they're going to get an interventionist assigned? How does it work?
We have a weighted criteria, so we use multiple data points for eligibility to any of our intervention programs. So for example, and if it's Title I or intervention, so we look at MCAS data if it's applicable, we look at the iReady data, we look at DIBELS if it were reading, and also teacher recommendation plays a role in that as well. And so sometimes, it's rank order, to be honest with you, right? Because we want to make sure that we're hitting the most needy of the students and that they're seen as many times as possible, instead of spreading ourselves too thin. So sometimes a parent might think, and rightfully so, right, it's their child, that they might be the most needy. But we do have protocols in place to determine eligibility. And then that's flexible in the sense that we have all of I apologize for that, the SST, the Student Success Team meetings within the buildings. If a teacher is concerned about a student and their current progress in a class, they can be brought up for an SST and goals are set and recommendations can be made. Students can exit, and our whole goal is for students to exit out of our intervention and our Title I programming. And so we use our data 3 times throughout the year to determine that eligibility. So in the winter, after that testing window, we'll again reassess our students and kind of shuffle them, right? Because in intervention, hopefully, you're targeting those specific skills and they're exiting out and they're moving. So it's a flexible model in the sense that we hope and we want our students to exit out of our intervention programs, but we can also take students in if they're falling behind, you know what I'm saying? So hopefully, so we do have protocols.
So when they receive those MCAS scores, if they had a partially meeting, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going into intervention. They would have to meet the other criteria.
But what if they do have that score and the parent really does want the intervention to happen? How does the parent get a voice in the ranking?
Well, it's based on
really
data.
state,
And
yeah,
so
it's
you have
based
multiple data points, and so an MCAS score, their students are all ranked by, based on need. And, if their student is one of the neediest students at that time throughout the year, then they would be picked up for the support.
I don't want to speak for you, but I would imagine that if a teacher realizes that they have students in their classroom who are partially meeting expectations, that they're not going to rely just on the interventionist to provide support to that student. That there'll be intervention that the teacher will provide in the classroom.
Yeah, so we've used our tier 1 strategies, of
Right.
course, because when you get that data, and that's what we're doing, I think, which is so nice. with our, FPC, our fundamental classroom model, with our guided reading, with our new Reveal Math program, it lends itself to a centers model, right? So you've got this direct instruction for 20 to 30 minutes, and then you can break out into groups, into skill groups, and you can really hone in on student needs. So yes, tier 1, of course, first, at the get-go, and then if that's not working, then we move to a tier 2 model.
I guess maybe the best way to say it, it's not all or nothing. It's not,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Okay, so that they are getting some type of
It
assistance.
sounds like, actually, the answer would be the teacher has a say in it.
Sure.
What
Yeah,
they're-
yes,
So the
they do.
parents should touch base with the teacher.
Absolutely.
And put it,
Communication
give
with
the
the
input.
teacher is key.
Yeah.
And the teachers are providing intervention in the sense of those centers, right? They're pulling groups together based on ability. And those ability levels ebb and flow based on the standard that's being taught.
That's great. Thank you.
Can I ask a related question?
Sure.
And just to finish up, I know you talked about that toolbox, so that's something within Reveal Math, I guess, it gives them.
No, iReady.
iReady.
And I ready, okay.
Yep, it's for
So
ELA
with it-
math.
For mathematics and for ELA. And it's standards-based, so they can look up a mathematics standard that a student is challenged with, or an ELA standard, and they can specifically assign a lesson to a small group, to an individual student, or whole class.
And just to follow up on that, what's nice about it is within the iReady toolbox, it can be a topic either as an introduction, as a review, as an additional support, as an assessment. So based on what it is you want to do under that particular standard, you can then use that within your small groups based on whatever it is that, oh boy, they did not learn this in second grade, and as a third grade teacher, I need to do a review of that so I could use that from the teacher toolkit.
Okay, and I hear a lot from parents who have questions about their kids who have met the standards. And you don't want those kids just wasting their time while they're on iReady. What does that My Pathways do for kids who have already demonstrated that they've met standards?
Right.
Eighth grade.
Yeah, well, no, so the way
At
that,
any grade.
yeah, at any grade, so if you're a third grade student and we have let's say 5% or so that already come into the year at grade level, they will extend them to the higher grade level. So you can be doing fourth grade work at a third grade level on the iReady. Now, one of the things we don't do is we won't actually take, let's say, the Reveal Math program and say, do the fourth grade Reveal Math, because that would really not work as a former elementary teacher. I'm sure you understand that. But what we do have that opportunity is that if you're a third grade student, you can do iReady all the way up through high school. It can high school style problems. So based on how you do on that diagnostic, if you are above grade level and you're doing great, bravo. You're always going to be challenged. Yep, you're always going to be challenged.
Because I think, like Dr. Hirsch mentioned, the My Pathway is adaptive, right? So it's based on how the student is answering the questions, so the questions can get harder the more they answer correct, and they could then, get easier based on their answers.
Okay.
And for the gentleman sitting at the end of the table, Dr. Parks, he's going to talk a little bit about the school schedules and changing any schedules for maximum learning time.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Hirsch. So it's fun for me to be here for the first time as the principal of McCarthy after being here for many years as the principal of Parker. So it feels kind of neat, so I'm excited to be doing that. I'll be back in about a month with Principal Blagg, who's at Parker now, and we'll get into some of this in a little bit more detail. But for tonight, I'd just like to give a little bit of a snapshot in relationship to the topic at hand. So we spent a tremendous amount of time building both middle school schedules at the same time with groups. We were supported by the DM group, but then folks from central office and the administrative teams at both middle schools worked together to develop the schedules. Two of the things that I'd like to highlight tonight that we really wanted to have happen at the McCarthy was lower class sizes and also creating opportunity for student voice and choice within the schedule. So somewhere between that kind of elementary or lower middle school point and the high school where they have a lot of flexibility and choice for the kids. So we wanted to kind of find that sweet spot in the middle, and I do think that we were able to do that. The way that we were able to achieve some low class sizes, which we're very excited about, was by adding a fifth class into that core rotation. So traditionally, we had ELA, math, science, and social studies, but we've added in a fifth class for most students that ends up being a world language, Spanish or French, depending on what students select. For some kids, it ends up being either literacy support or some other type of special education services. So by having a fifth place for students to go throughout that rotation, it allows us to keep our class sizes very manageable. Where we level mathematics, that does still continue to dictate somewhat of what the classes end up being, but overall, we're very excited about the lower class sizes that we're able to have this year. And although the teachers do have an additional section per day, it is giving them the opportunity to work with kids in a direct way, and they have been appreciating the class sizes that we've had. At the same time, as far as student voice and choice goes, we do have one block dedicated to, on Mondays, it's social emotional support for all kids. It's an SEL program. The other 4 days, we've created electives, and for students that might choose one of our music ensembles, they would do that for 2 of the 4 days. And then they also get to select one of the different electives that we've created: health, phys ed, art, technology, a variety of different electives that we have that our staff have put together. It also gives us an opportunity to have students receive additional services during that block, so we don't have to take them out of specialists, which for us, it continues to be a rotation of art, Project Lead the Way, health, and phys ed, which we've had historically at both middle schools. We really worked hard to preserve that, so all students are able to access that and not have to go to it on a part-time basis. And we use that elective / intervention block in order to help give kids additional support where they need it. So things like our interventionists that we've been talking about, we target those blocks in order for kids to be able to get that help during the day. And that's really been working out quite well for us. We know that it's going to be a little bit of trial and error. It was in the beginning, but as you can see on the slides, throughout the course of this year, in the spring, we'll continue to talk with our teachers. We'll end up surveying in a formal capacity and then making adjustments as we go into the spring and into the summer, so we can just continue to make kind of small improvements as we move forward with the new schedule and supporting. Not only, I know, math and reading are critically important, but for me as principal, I need to step back and make sure that we're paying attention to everything, right? Because if it's not important to students overall, then we shouldn't be offering it. So that's part of what I need to do, is when I need to slow him down sometimes, is just remind him that we do teach other things. So I appreciate that.
And then I know we've been doing questions all along, but any additional questions? A lot of work, a lot of moving parts as we go through this.
Just a comment. As always, the amount of work you guys do is actually quite incredible. It's a lot of effort, and I just want to say thank you for the work. The educators know way more about the MCAS than I do, but I can just generally see you put a lot of hard work into that, so. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I've been attending the PTO meetings for both middle schools, and it's always done jointly by Jeff and Josh in terms of presentations, and it seems to be working quite well.
It's great, yeah, I agree.
And so I honestly think you should give us a little, I was gonna do it at the end of this meeting, but your days of awesomeness, you need to talk about it for 2 minutes.
Oh, it was so great.
Oh, yeah, the Days of Awesome.
Oh, it was a blast. So
Yeah.
we had a joint fundraiser between both middle schools, and each essentially, so a gentleman came in and they put together a presentation for kids and got them excited about participating. And the reward or the payoff for kids was this Day of Awesomeness, which when they came in and presented to us in early September, and we're still getting going and trying to figure things out, and they talked about it's somewhere between like a little bit of like obstacle course meets the show Wipeout. And basically when they set everything up, it did mirror that to some extent. So I will tell you that I went to the Parker event, which was last Wednesday, and ours was Thursday, because I had to just take a peek of what we were in for. I turned the corner at Sully's, and the whole field, I was like, oh, what is happening right now? I'm like, oh, this is real. This is a thing, right? But just not only from like a visual aspect, but the kids were so engaged and so into it. And so what I kept thinking about was, how's this going to translate for the older kids? And we talked about it quite a bit, and I was a little bit nervous. Everybody was 6 years old that day. They had an absolute blast. They were running around. They were physically active, which I think is an important part of any time we do something outside and things like that with the kids. But overall, it was just such a fun team building component, and I think that translated to both schools, where we had 4 different events, one for each one of our teams, and just seeing the kids and the staff interacting, and it was just a great way to celebrate. It was really a lot of fun.
And so I'm just gonna remind you, the parent volunteers, you had over 60
We had over 60 volunteers.
at
Yeah.
McCarthy,
Yeah.
and then they had
They had even more.
more
Yeah,
at Parker.
Right.
For that day, to help make the day as smooth as it was. So
Right.
truly a wonderful bringing together of all folks, and, you know, it's not about, somebody said to me, oh, you know, it's not gonna be about academics. Believe me, you need to be in a good state of mind in order to learn.
That's right.
And to bring all that together, excellent. So I just wanted you to have that moment to.
No, I really
It was
appreciate it.
excellent.
We took a bunch of pictures. They're rotating on all the TVs we have throughout the school, and you can see the kids will stop and wait for theirs to come up again, even though they're embarrassed that they're on TV, but they will wait as long as it takes to make sure they see themselves again. So
That's
it's
great.
really been cool. So it's carrying on. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis, did you have something?
I was just gonna, you mentioned real math for elementary, middle school is the same program, a different program. And then the second part of that question is, how was that program equipped for the kids when they get 7th, 8th grade that, you know, they have been ahead the whole time and now they're ready for that higher level math, they're gonna get the honors. How was that?
Great question, and I did skip over that through all my excitement of talking about math. So thank you for giving me that opportunity to speak to that. So with the 6 through 11 program that we have is the Big Ideas program, which is the same program we had before, but it's an updated version. We had the 2015 version, now we have the 2023 version. So what we had done was when we began the process at the middle school and the high school in a similar way to what we did at the elementary school, we went through the same process of surveying the teachers, reviewing curriculum, reviewing other options, looking at some programs, getting some presentations, and the overwhelming majority of the vote was, let's keep the Big Ideas, it's working, we're very happy with that, it's staying with this, up with the standards, where the math expressions was behind the standards for Massachusetts, so we kept the program. And the program is very similar to how we run things within Chelmsford in the sense that beginning in 7th grade, they are able to differentiate for an honors program as well as the accelerated and or traditional math class beginning in the 7th grade so that you can do the 8th grade Algebra 1 honors. That's a 9th grade book that we use the high school version in 8th grade so that students who are able to complete that will begin their high school career taking geometry honors, whereas 85% of our students begin taking algebra. The only other program that we adopted as part of this big implementation is our statistics program. Actually, something that Mrs. Santos brought up last year about, and we have a brand new both statistics in our college prep full year course, as well as our AP statistics, and that's also a brand new program as well. The other major part of our high school math curriculum is the calculus, and we had adopted just about 3 years ago a updated AP calculus one, so that was not something that we needed to revisit, and we believe that that program has been working very well.
It's great. I had heard about that and it was really exciting, so I'm so glad to see it. A question for you in terms of math staff, okay, teachers for math. Are you finding that challenging to make sure that we have enough teachers? We have everybody in place right now, right? We don't have any openings.
We do not have any openings, and I would say, now, you could say that I'm not telling the truth here, but I will tell you this is the truth. We have, at this point, the best math staff that we've had in my 12 years here. We've had a couple new hires at both the middle school and the high school level, and they are both home runs. And we are doing very well with our staffing, with our collaboration, camaraderie. It's really a good place to be is within the math department.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
My final comment is, your presentation brought home to me that AI has met teaching, and teaching has met AI. This whole thing about the individualized learning, the iReady program, parents needing to understand the individualized learning, the children being shown where they should be heading, setting their own goals and so on. All of this is because of having the AI, the technology. So that's kind of pretty amazing.
Yes, and we very much want to encourage and endorse that technology, but by no means, and I know you weren't inferring this, but by no means can you ever replace a teacher. Teachers could never be replaced by computers, technology, AI. They are the ones that truly teach the kids. But the fact that we can have that technology to support the kids makes it really the home run.
Absolutely. Days of awesomeness can't happen with
You're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
We need to have the days of awesomeness within the mathematics department.
I have a couple questions. So first on the initiative number 4, with regards to the middle schools. I know that we were going through, obviously this was a big change this year, and we learned a lot, okay, over the course of setting up the schedules. Some of the feedback that we had gotten, especially from special education parents, was I don't think they were completely clear on how their special education services were going to be delivered or where, and then what the impact was on things like voice and choice or specialists. So one of the things I think going forward is that maybe they need more information about, how this is all going to fit together for their child. Obviously, the services that their child needs to receive are very important, and we are obligated to provide those. But, some of the concern was, but then, they miss out on other enriching experiences that may actually make school really enjoyable for them. So how can we find a balance for both of those things? I don't know if that's possible. But I do think it's important that we have that conversation with parents so that they can understand what some of the obstacles are that we face or how it is that we can remove some of those obstacles to be able to improve the experience in middle school for their kids.
Yeah, and I think now that we have, now that we're living it for the first time, I do think that throughout the course of this year and as we get into the spring and start looking at how we're going to schedule for next year, I'm certainly more comfortable with how we'll be offering things and what other options might be, available within the schedule.
Right.
That we'll be able to have those discussions. And like, as you said, Donna, like right in the beginning, it was new for everyone, and we're just
Right.
trying to kind of figure out how it's gonna land and trying not to just duplicate what we had done for so
Sure.
long. And as I had mentioned when I was talking earlier about trying to preserve that specialist block, so we know that at least all students would be able to access a lot of the different classes outside of the kind of general core curriculum, so to speak. And that's where that other intervention and elective block came from. But we do have some flexibility within there now that we're understanding it a little bit better as well. So again, I do think as, moving forward, we'll be able to get some input from people as to where those services might fall.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And then I had a question about the data overall. I understand the need for data, and I think it really plays an important role in helping guide us and how it is that we're going to move forward in terms of instruction and student performance. My question is, how does this impact teacher creativity? I have a couple questions. How many days do we spend in assessment? And just add additional stress to our students because they feel like, they have to reach these benchmarks that are very visual for them now, right, through iReady and whatnot. How are we addressing all of that?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, so
Okay.
in terms of assessing students, we do 3 benchmarks a year. So
Right.
there's the fall, winter, and the spring.
How many days does it take for each kid?
Well, it all depends. So at Parker now with the longer blocks, they are pretty much getting done with all their students in one session. At the McCarthy, and the elementary schools are just because it's the same teacher. McCarthy, it's taking a little bit longer because the blocks are shorter, but like one of the things that, and I noticed this, is that when there are some, like a few straggler kids, they're collecting them together and just pulling those kids, and they might be with assistant principal, Calabrese, right, to let them finish up. So it takes a little bit longer, maybe 2 days at grade 7 and 8, and about 1 day-ish, maybe a few stragglers here and there at the Parker School with the longer block.
Okay.
And just to answer the first question you had about the teacher creativity, I will tell you that the idea of teacher creativity is something that is so important to me within the mathematics, because when I was in the classroom teacher, I was, felt like I was very creative, and the last thing we ever want to do is hold back a teacher from being able to be creative in the way that they, teach the material. The data is not an instructional technique. The data will tell us where students are, where there are weaknesses as individuals or with an entire class. but I very much offer the creative freedom to say, here are the resources, here's our, guides, if you will. But if you have particular ways of teaching it, or you have certain things, I want to encourage it, and I have been throughout the math department at all the levels. So the data drives what we need to focus on. The teachers then take over to say, this is how I'm going to get you there. And I provide them with that menu of options, with the core curriculum for the reveal, with an online program like an IXL or a NORE, with a iReady program, et cetera, et cetera. So they have that plate of options.
Great, thank you. It's important for me to have people at home understand that while we're talking about data, it doesn't eliminate everything else in the classroom that's really important to the educational experience. Now, what about the stress that is on kids? As I said, because now the parents can get the reports at home and say, well, we need to work on these things, and, they know it in school. We've known even prior to iReady that MCAS can cause stress for kids. Does this add another layer of stress that we need to be concerned about?
I'm going to say no, and I'm going to say no on two different levels. The first is that the iReady is not something that's the level of the MCAS, where it's, you're going to graduate high school or you're not going to graduate, or we need to be meeting. It's something that is done that, yes, we want you to take it seriously, but it's not the sort of accommodations and high stakes that you have on the MCAS. Second part is, within the iReady program, even when you're doing the diagnostic, after a couple problems, they have a game come up. Now, the game's only 10 seconds, but just to keep it a little bit more lighthearted, if you will. So, yes, they take tests normally within every subject. You have quizzes and tests. It's just this one happens to be a more official one.
Okay.
So, in a perfect world, we could use all of our time just to be using for instruction, but that data we get and we can use and analyze, and then more importantly for me, that my pathway that can provide that individualized instruction to them, either as a full class or as a homework assignment, or to be able to do during morning work or during an intervention period, to be able to do that, that is where it's really most beneficial.
Donna, just to talk a little bit about that, I mean, the teachers are very good at obviously knowing where their students are, and if they were having some stressors while, either taking an assessment or working on the MyPath, I mean, that's where I think the intervention would come in, is that human element.
Great.
I'm sorry, Jeff, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think it's important to, the students will take their cues from the adults, I think. And so if we go into it saying how important this is, and we make it a very tense situation, then they're going to react accordingly. And I think that translates to home as well. However it's perceived at home, what's talked about at home, those type of things, I think that may add or detract from some of the stress that the kids feel. We try to remind them that, you've taken 100 tests this year. This one happens to be MCAS. You're going to be fine. Go in there, take your time, do your best. And I think if we continue to approach those things in that supportive way, that will take some of that stress away from them, as opposed to, like Matthew said, putting all this pressure or high stakes on it. I think, so, we can lead by example by
I don't think
by
this
doing
district
that.
has, having taught here and been an administrator here, I mean, I was never this and I mean, Susan, you can talk about this too, was never it's the MCAS, it
Right.
was just good teaching leads to good test scores, right? We never try to put that pressure on the kids.
And I agree,
Yeah.
okay? But I also know that, teachers are a special breed. And, I was like, where are my MCAT scores in October? Because I wanted to see how my kids did on biology. And, I can say to myself, well, it's just one measure and all of this, but at the end of the day, I wanted to see how they did, and I think that teachers can be really hard on themselves. Not that they're projecting that onto the kids at all, that's not what I'm suggesting here, but I know that everybody wants to strive to do the best that they can. And even if, even if it's, as we say, not a high stakes kind of thing, they are the things that keep you awake at night, wondering what it is that you're going to do to improve things in the classroom.
And I think I completely agree with that. I think helping to support the students, as I had mentioned, we have a SEL block where we use the second step curriculum, but all of our students take a health education class.
Right.
Through that coursework, we're teaching coping strategies, stress management, things like that the kids can not only use in the moment, but also hopefully take with them. And I think that's kind of a cool feature of what we're also doing to help support kids with that,
Great.
right?
I'm sorry, Susan.
No, I just want to piggyback.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think the stress comes from parents who are so concerned about this. And
That's right.
do you do enough to, not enough, but what do you do to help parents feel better about their kids participating in this assessment?
Yeah, I think, just having the parents be kind of a part of the regular conversation, I think it's important as we continue to try to encourage and work with our staff members to be reaching out regularly and having parents be partners in their, the education of their kids. I think that is a big part of it, but also letting parents know that, and it's come up a couple times tonight, it's one measure of where they're at, right? And so we want to see where they're at so we can help improve and build on what their deficiencies or where they might be struggling. And just, anytime I get the chance, similar to the way I'm approaching it right now, is that the kids will take their cues from the adults in their lives. And I think we can approach it that way and help them understand that this is all part of the plan in order to help them be prepared for whatever it is they're gonna do after they leave our district. And I think if we continue to approach it that way together, then we'll be doing everything we can to help the kids do well and the parents survive along the way. Right?
I was just thinking about that, and as they move forward, they're always competing in some way. And one of the things I've always tried to tell mine is compete with yourself. I think, and not with anyone else or anything else in the system. And if this is done correctly right from the beginning, I think this can lead to that, a competition with yourself about, keeping on achieving and keeping on progressing because it's individualized. And if we guide them that way, and I think from what I'm hearing here, things are happening going that route, which is great.
Yeah,
And I hope that that's the
It's really
way.
not about passing or failing, it's about growth, right? And how much
Right.
have you grown over time?
Absolutely.
And celebrating and having celebrations over that growth.
Absolutely.
And it's individualized for sure.
Yeah.
And I do think that we have that atmosphere here, for sure.
And just to follow up on that with the idea of the growth, to me, the most important data point that I look at is what is the student growth percentage? Because I want to see that every student has the opportunity to grow. Some students are well below grade level, but we want to make sure they're making not just 1 year's growth, but a little bit more than that. But also you have the students who are higher achieving, that are at or above grade level coming in. They still need to see growth take place. So the first thing I always look at for each grade level in each school is what is the student growth percentage? Is it above the 50% state average, meaning they made at least 1 year's growth, if not more? And, we're proud to say that we have an SGP that is above that 50% mark at all of our levels, which tells me that regardless of where you're at grade level, above grade level, below grade level, all different types of students are making at least a year's growth, if not more. So that to me is the most important thing.
So circling back to where we started with John's comment, this is a tremendous amount of work by your committee, and I really can't thank you enough for all of the information that you've shared with us tonight. It's really, really important and very informative. And, I'm hoping that people at home that are watching have a better understanding of what our plan is going forward in order to be able to address some of these issues. But it really is just a tremendous amount of work, and we want to thank you and all of our staff very much for all the hard work that you've put in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As someone who's been in it, I really commend everyone who's been part of this strategic plan and how it's really unified everything and how coordinated and comprehensive it is really impressive to me. I think districts come a long way in just a few years and really finding a way to bring all this data together to look at the students in a more unified way. I think everyone's done a great job with it.
And even though we
You're in
have.
it now. You're in it now.
I'm in it now,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good seeing you, thank you.
Thank you, you too, thank you. So we're gonna have our team uniforms on, John.
I know I didn't have the vest today. I should have brought the vest, I thought about it.
Because Jeff's not here.
Jeff's not here, I know, I kind of lost my.
Yeah.
you wear a shirt and a
Thank
tie.
you. Thank you for mentioning that.
Interested.
Thank you. Yes, and
Good night.
thank you to Jeff, yes.
Good to see you guys, thank you.
I'll
Thank
get some
you.
plaid shirts. I have plaid shirts.
They need a green.
All right.
Moving along, that was a good presentation.
You guys have
Second-
such a good team.
What's
That
that?
was
You guys have such a
We have
great
very
team.
good team. No, we really do. And Linda, obviously, and Susan's going to be joining that team as well to really kind of lead the steering committee part of it. They do work very hard,
Yeah,
so it
it's-
is nice to be able to.
It's really
report.
evident.
Really
I think
nice.
it's really evident.
For me, anyway, to see how the strategic plan is
Yeah.
now kind of.
Coming into focus.
Exactly, because it really was, it was, I don't want to say vague, but I just didn't see how it was
Right.
all going to come together. And now to see this is really, really nice. And I agree, I don't know who said it, but in terms of the strategic plan, it's just great to have something that we're actually utilizing, and that's actually, kind of giving us that focus going forward.
Agree.
Having been part of the strategic committee, and if Jeff were here, I think he would say exactly the same thing. It was really great to see how people came together, no matter what their role was in the system, to do their very best. And I'm looking at Joanna because I remember she was on one of the committees, and the things the committee were doing were not all about finance and budgeting or whatever, but you always had like incredible ideas that I thought it was fabulous. And that's just an example and how everybody came together really to try to meet the different needs of the district.
Agree. All right, moving along, we're going to actually stay with Joanna and hear a little bit about our first quarter is already done. If you believe it or not, it's kind of flown by. So the first quarter financial report that Joanna is going to present, it's in the similar format that we've had in the past. And we'll turn it over to you to walk us through.
Thank you. In your packet is our kind of standard quarterly update. There's a little cover memo and the financials out of our general ledger system, the year-to-date budget report, a grant and revolving fund summary, our student activity accounts, and I'm just gonna jump right in and then we can ask any questions. So our budget for fiscal year 2024 is $70,700,000. I'm gonna, it's really early in the year, but some of the variances have popped out right away since the majority of our budget is labor, and we know what staff we have, and we know what we still need to hire, mainly in the support staff area. So overall, our classroom teacher category is favorable by $232,100. And the reason that it's favorable is similar to prior years, when we hire new people at less than master step 3. So that'll be an opportunity to reallocate those funds that we know we're not going to spend in those salaries to other priorities of the district. I just want to point out one little encumbrance glitch I'm having with the reports. We're slightly over encumbered in this category. When we start out the fiscal year, part of the beginning is you encumber everybody's salaries, which we did. Then when we did all the movements of the teachers to the new schools between the middle schools, for whatever reason, that encumbrance didn't subtract from one school and add to the other school. It stayed in both schools. And it didn't happen with every movement. So I'm working with the vendor to see how to true up the encumbrance. I know a way to manually fix it, but it's pretty labor intensive. So I'm going to ask them to help me with a systematic way to remove that over encumbrance. And some of it worked just fine if we had a teacher going from one elementary to another elementary. So when you look at the report and you see that encumbrance, it's still a little too high.
Was double dinging you on the people?
Just on the middle schools, I don't know, but that's why the vendor will help with that. But overall, when we calculate it manually, which I can do, overall, we're favorable by $232,100. The other favorable variance in this category is the lane changes. We budget one line item for people who were working on achieving a higher degree when we had budgeted $150,000, and I think it's like 21 people achieved that. So Later in the presentation, I'm going to ask for a budget transfer to move $134,862 into the labor accounts where those teachers' salary is recorded. So that will be favorable by $15,213. The other area that we won't know, it changes throughout the year, is when a teacher has an approved leave of absence. And the unpaid portion will result in a favorable variance. The same is true, everything I talked about classroom teachers happens with our specialist teachers, so special ed, ELL, that area reading. And right now that's favorable by $247,072. The other area that is favorable is our employee separation costs. So this is the 25% early retirement incentive. So we had paid teachers in June of 2023, which was fiscal year 2023, instead of July of 2023, which is fiscal 2024. So we are going to be favorable in that category by $28,343 because we were able to pay it early by a month since we had some opportunities in fiscal 23 to spend that down. One category that we were a little unfavorable is in this capital land and buildings. This is the local capital account. Typically, we, in the spring, we come to you with one-time purchase considerations or one-time projects. One of our one-time projects from last fiscal year, the McCarthy Science Labs, there were some costs that were greater than what we saw last June. And those are in the areas of electrical, drywall, abatement, and plumbing. And later in the packet, I'm going to ask for a budget transfer from these favorable categories that we just talked about, like being under in teacher salaries, to cover this extra cost. Right now, it's on this report at the end of September, it's $108,000. And talking with Brian Curley, our Director of Facilities, there's a couple more expenses coming. So it's the budget transfer is gonna be a little bit higher than 108. And the next section is special ed tuitions. So we record those in the local account when they're initially encumbered, and then at the fourth quarter, we do our offset to the circuit breaker revolving fund. So high level, just a refresher, we budgeted $6.7 million in special ed out-of-district tuitions for fiscal '24. And then we know that we have to take the circuit breaker offset of that 2574768. So our budget on the local side is that $4.179 million. So that was the budget in fiscal '24 that we did last spring. Since that time, we've learned a couple more offsets that we will have. We know that we are going to have a Valley Collaborative tuition credit. Right now, that number is $152,200, and it might change. The superintendent, so keep us updated based on when Valley has their board meetings, if that number is what they actually end up with. And then we also prepaid fiscal year 2024 tuitions in fiscal '23 by $1.5 million. So with those two credits, if you will, or prepayments, we know we are going to be favorable in this category by about $1.6 million. Now, it's very early to know if we're not going to have more out-of-district tuitions come in. It's only October. We have encumbered what we know about, but there could be some more very large special ed out-of-district tuitions come in, so we'll leave this alone until we know more about the students moving in and moving out of the district. And then the last little chart is just a reminder of our school choice revolving fund. And this helps pay the one-to-one computer initiatives. So the balance, right now it's at 2.6 million. And then we paid about 180,000 for the one-to-one computer initiative. And once we get the rest of our school choice revenues, we are estimating the balance of this fund to stay about the same, this 2.6 million at the end of this year. So it's a very high level of how we're doing against our 70,700,000 operating budget. Are there any questions?
Just on some of the utilities already seem to be running a little high, or the encumbrances are higher than the budget in a couple of.
In a couple of the schools
Yeah, a
there,
couple of schools.
overall, we're okay. The good news is like there's air conditioning in the modulars and that, so that kind of increased our costs. But then we've had, I think we're having a pretty even temperature fall, so the heat may not have to kick in soon. So I think we're gonna be okay, but we'll keep an eye on that.
I'm sorry, did you have a question?
They said it's gonna be a milder winter.
Oh, okay.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Look, we have an El Nino coming this
Yeah.
year. It's gonna be a bad winter. We had an easy one last year.
I had a question about the employee separation costs.
Yes.
Is that going to be our practice going forward, is to pay in the current fiscal year as opposed to the next one?
I think it depends on how we're doing that fiscal year.
Okay.
I think if we have funds that we haven't reallocated to another priority, it's a good way to free up some funds in the future fiscal year for some unknowns that we, no matter how good our budgeting is, there might still be some things that we just aren't aware of.
Like with the science labs, for example?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. The next little handout is kind of the color one, and it's the grants and revolving funds. So the top part is the multi-year grants. So primarily the entitlement grants like special education, Title I. Those we have until September of 2024 to spend out. So we'll do so. And then the very first one is like ESSER 3. That's another one that we still have several months to implement. And then the middle section is this year's grants, 2024. So our entitlements have been approved, and we just got word that our special ed entitlement grants were just approved over the weekend, so I'll populate those numbers. And then the next section is all the little private grants. Circuit breaker is on there. That's our 2.574 million carryover. Over the weekend, our circuit breaker number for fiscal 2024 came out. It's another, I think it's 2.5 million again, so I'll update the charts. That's based on all the work Amy Reese did in late June and early July to put in all of our claims. They reimbursed at 75% for tuition and 57% of transportation.
I'm sorry, what was the tuition again?
75%,
That's pretty good.
yeah, that's the cap, that's the top.
Can we add that to our list of legislative talking points to make sure that they continue to do that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the last page is the grants and the revolving funds only, so like school nutrition, athletics, and all of those. No revolving fund is a deficit balance, and then we'll just watch those revenue and expenses closely all year.
On the grants, do we have plans for those ESSA funds that have to be expended for this year?
I think we're probably going to amend, because we haven't amended it yet. Most of it is sitting in supplies, like technology supplies. So Dr. Hirsch will work with the superintendent and Bill Silver and see what do we still need that's in alignment with our goals to finish out this grant.
Okay.
Any questions on the grants or revolving funds? Okay. The next handout is our student activity account, so the high school and the two middle schools. So the high school has a balance of 204,000, and there's all the clubs and sports, and no club is in, deficit balance. And then McCarthy has about $26,000 in their different clubs, and Parker has about 51,000 in their different clubs. And I can either talk now about what we're gonna do with the middle school activity accounts, or I have a memo at the end of this fiscal, I think, whoever you're more comfortable.
Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that now? I know we still have to take some votes.
They do that at the end.
Yeah, we can do that, yeah, so.
Okay. So one of the, with the middle school realignment, we needed to address what to do with the grades 5, 6, 7, and 8, because those are clubs in both Parker and McCarthy historically. So in looking at our guidelines that DESE writes and then we tweak them for our district, we already have a guideline that says residual funds from inactive student activities shall revert to the student activity general student body fund of that specific school unless otherwise designated. So what that means is we can take, for example, in McCarthy, because they have grades historically 5, 6, 7, and 8, we can take grades 5 and 6, the money's in there, and move them to the general student body fund, still within McCarthy. And then for Parker, they also have 5, 6, 7, and 8, but we will take the monies that are in grades 7 and 8 and put it in the general student body fund for Parker. So the monies stay within each school. There's no transferring between bank accounts. It's almost like closing out an inactive club and putting it into this general student body fund. And then that fund is at the principal's discretion to use on students. So then he can, work with his teams and his students to see, where should these funds be utilized? Like maybe he wants to do a little seed money for grades 7 and 8 to get them on their fun-filled trips, or same with grade 5 and 6 to get them going, so.
So would that be the agency account or the principal account?
The principal account.
Principal account.
Well, no, sorry. The agency account is like the savings.
Okay.
And then the principal account is like the checking.
So we'll go to the principal account?
So it's, right now, it's easier to explain to kind of look at it within the club. So we'll just move it within the clubs down below. Okay, so if you look at, are you looking at Parker or McCarthy?
McCarthy.
Okay, so if you look at McCarthy, so overall, they're at that 25.9 up at the top, and then down below, it's the same total, the 25.9. Okay, so up at the top, it's just saying 12,000 of the 25,000 is in the savings account, and 13,000 is in the checking account. That's all that's saying, and then down below is the club.
I got it.
So the transfer just kind of happens within the clubs.
So the 5, 6 goes away and it goes to the general student body fund right above it.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
good.
This is me not understanding where the funds originate from. So, okay, so I've got Parker and McCarthy. These are still the old Parker and McCarthy.
That is correct.
Okay, that's one. And then two, like, where did that band money come from?
They do like little fundraisers.
So it is from fundraising.
Yeah.
And it's almost, all of these breakdowns here, like drama, cross-country, whatever, it's all from fundraising.
Right, dramas from the ticket sales for the production.
Right, so that's why I think, so they need to go with the students, in other words. So it's been fundraised by the students who were at Parker, and some of them are now at McCarthy. and some of them are still at Parker. This is why I don't know, they have different balances, quite different, in fact. I think Parker has quite a bit more than, right? When you look at Drama Club in Parker, it's $34,000. And McCarthy only has $7,000. And that was all raised by Parker kids and Parker families at that point. So I think in order to make it fair, it has to be, it should be carried over with the students that raised it.
I understand your point, and I'm just going to give another example, because we talked about this in following the student.
Yeah.
Like another example is, let's take both of them. Monies was raised by 8th graders, and those 8th graders are now freshmen.
Right.
So, and that's always been the case.
Yeah.
Right? But the money stays with the school.
Right.
So,
But the thing is that when you're raising it as an 8th grader, you realize that. That's why even with PTOs, you ask them to please try to spend as much as possible that you can, still having some savings carrying over to the next year for this particular period, because it's benefiting the kids that the money was raised for. And I think in this, I honestly don't know what's the fairest way of doing it, but it's a substantial difference between the two.
It is in that one, it is in that particular club. The hard part is really distinguishing, like, who raised what, because both schools used to be grades 5 to 8. So it's hard to say, 5th and 6th graders raised this much money, it should go to Parker. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders raised this much money, it should go to McCarthy, because they were both operating as a 5 to 8 school, and we
Right.
never segregated the money by grade level, it was by activity.
So would the fairest way be to basically take half and half and, do you see
Well,
what
I
I
think
mean?
the concern would be that you're involving like multiple bank accounts and transfers of like
I
big
understand
sums of
that.
cash around I think if the rule has been always that it stays at the school, I think it stays at the school. I mean, unless the otherwise designated means we'd have to vote to move it somewhere else, but even then, I don't think we should do that. I think we should do how it's been done.
right, the language for otherwise designated does give us flexibility. That's why the words are in there. But as the superintendent said, I couldn't go back and tell you, based on our activity of, like, let's take the McCarthy, of this 25,000, which student raised
Right.
it. It's, there were students in chorus from all grades, doing fundraisers, or students in band. So even, I don't even, that work paper to make a recommendation on how to move it would be a challenge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I understand that. Well, I don't know. That's the thing. It's how it was it's fundraising. It's part of fundraising.
I
How
told,
much is it going to affect what each school can do or not do? Is there going to be a big imbalance now that Parker
Right.
School can do a lot more than McCarthy because they've got twice as much money? Or is it going to even out in terms of equity for what,
That's a good question.
Well, how the
What is the
program will work.
impact?
as far as the, like the number of after-school clubs and things that are offered, they're basically the same at both schools because we fund that through the local budget. This was just like individual additional, like fundraising or receipts for, like I said, ticket sales, something like that, that happened within the club. I honestly don't know how they use that. I assume they use that to like a seed money for the next year's show. Or if they need to go out and buy a performance, because sometimes you have to pay for things, that's what they would use it for. But I'm not aware of any like real kind of funding strategy to this. Each individual kind of club director or club themselves knows what they raise money for and what they don't. This doesn't happen often, obviously, when this happens, but what we usually do is just defer back to our kind of standard procedures. and where these clubs, these grade levels just don't exist anymore, it would be like a club at the high school, and this has happened, that has money in it that, the group moves on, and you just have to basically dispose of the money. You have to put it somewhere so it can be reconciled. And after so many years, our policy basically says, the club is dissolved and the money goes into the general fund for that school. We've never transferred money from one school to another school. Now, I know there's only one high school, so this hasn't come up, but I don't know how or what the rationale you would use to divvy up the money would be, because we don't know where it came from. We didn't have it separated between how much grades 5,
Right,
6,
like they could
7.
have raised 20 grand 4 years ago,
And
which
they-
had nothing to do with this, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting you
I
should
don't know
bring
what the
that up.
historicals are.
Because I do have a question about that, because I know that the PTOs certainly, they also try to monitor their spending, because, if you have a big fundraising year, you want to be able to use it for the kids that raise that money. Do we have any type of guidelines for how much money these clubs can carry forward on a year-to-year basis, or do we just, I was just wondering, okay.
No, there's just a guideline on how much you can have in the checking account at one time,
Okay.
but not an overall balance between checking and savings.
And then there's the other thing, maybe that 34,000 in Parker is just because they chose not to spend it, right? So maybe McCarthy was like, we're gonna utilize the money we raised, and Parker decided to save it. So we don't know any of the intent behind any of that money.
Right, so I think because those two particular funds have such a different amount, drama, that we really should look to see what the impact is.
Equalize it, maybe.
And to make sure that their programs that they have now,
Right.
can benefit, doing well and have the same access to whatever funds are needed. So if they lose their, what the difference is here, 20-something thousand dollars, that it's not going to, it's a substantial amount, that it's not going to impact them going forward in their drama club now at Parker. That's a substantial amount. And the reason I'm asking that is because I've heard a couple of things about, their tryouts and so on, and I heard that at Parker, there were so many young people, over 200 trying out for the play. It might have a bigger impact, have a more cost impact, and so on. So those are the kinds of things I think we really do need to know before making that final decision.
Joanna, I just want to go back to the PTOs for a second. Sometimes if they're going to do a big project, say like a playground, they'll have a separate account for just the playground and that they're fundraising. And so obviously, because playgrounds are expensive, you have to save a lot of money. And so that there's some understanding that certain fundraising money is going to that playground. So, maybe your child won't benefit from that, but going in, that this money is designated for that, that they have to earn a certain amount. And then other than that, I think they try to spend down their accounts so that the students who have fundraisers for that year can benefit. Is there any type of guidelines that we should, be offering to these clubs, activities, or even the administration around how it is that the money should be spent, so that way everybody benefits from their fundraising efforts while they're in the school? Or is that just something we don't even want to touch? I don't have any idea.
Do you want to say something?
I think we're thinking a lot
I was gonna say,
about
like a general rule of fundraising, I would assume if you're a PTO or some of the student activity stuff is, these are almost considered like a revolving fund. So,
Okay.
If you start with zero, you raise money for a particular purpose, hopefully within a year or some specified period of time, you say what you're going to use that money for. A couple of these clubs have, really with the exception of the drama and the band and the chorus they're not too significant. It looks almost to me like it's more of that kind of revolving fund. Money's coming in, money's going out. I don't know what the history of those two particular balances are, and I don't know even year over year, we'd have to go back and look and see what they started out at or what the intended outcome was. I think the people who have been associated with, say, Parker, drama and band and chorus are the same. People who've been at McCarthy Band and Chorus are the same. I assume the people who at Parker had raised this money have some intention of what they're gonna do with it. And if half of it was taken away to give to another school,
Then you'd get that argument.
well, they'd be upset, I'm sure, because they had planned
Yeah.
something. The other
Parker
school
would then get
maybe
mad.
raised money for something and then spent it on something. I just don't know what it was. And, in their mind, they don't have that money in their account now. If they had another 15,000 or 20,000 put in, I don't know what their intention would be. That's what's hard without knowing what this.
I agree with John,
background is.
like, you don't know historically what's happened. It could have been they were even at one point, and, McCarthy had a big play with expensive costumes, and Parker didn't, And just, over the years, it just kind of came out of balance, so.
I think it's just because, probably, we need to know a little more about how, because it's a substantial difference. But I also think it's probably band, chorus, and cross-country, but the other things are very equalized, were run by the same folks and so on. I think the drum is different. At each school, it's been quite different. So, I would try to
No,
find
I
out.
agree with you, it's been different, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
been the same people at the different schools.
I
Okay.
think you can look at it this way too. So Parker right now is the younger kids. Right now, they have a lot of money in drama. So maybe those younger kids, they don't have to raise as much money these next 2 years. And when those kids move to McCarthy, then they'll be ready to do more fundraising to beef up. So it's so many of the same people that move around that
Yeah.
eventually it will balance back out.
We can certainly ask on that big one, like what the fundraising was for, or if there's any rhyme or reason to it. I truly don't know what we'll get for an answer.
I think it
And we
would be
can let
important.
you know. But I still think it is hard when you have guidelines that we say, this is how we're gonna handle funds, to then go counter to that. We're gonna end up upsetting someone. Because someone in their mind has said, I raised money and put in this account, whether it was spent or not, this is what I think my balance is. And for us to ever say, well, we're gonna move that money to somewhere else, we're gonna have to have a really good reason, because I think those people are gonna come back to us and feel like, what did I spend, what did I fundraise for? If now I don't see the benefit of it, it just got moved somewhere else. I don't know what we'll get for an answer, we can certainly ask. And, again, there was no action recommended tonight because our guidelines actually say how it should be handled, but we can get the information for you on that and bring it back,
That'd be great.
just so you know.
That would be really good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. The last item is budget transfers. So we kind of already talked about these, but this is the details. Requesting 3 budget transfers. The first one is transferring $134,862 from the one-line salary reserve for lane change to all these different labor accounts for those people who achieved the higher degree, and they received their higher lane salary in the first pay of the school year. Do you want to take these one at a time? And
Please.
Yep.
I make a motion to approve the FY 2024 local operating budget transfer for $134,862 from the salary reserve lane change account to the various labor accounts as presented.
Second.
All right, is there any further discussion? This will be a roll call vote. Any further discussion? Sorry. Dennis?
Aye.
Sue?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Thank you. The second one is a budget transfer from the 6 different accounts to the local capital land and buildings account for $125,000 to cover the additional costs related to the McCarthy Middle School Science Lab renovations.
I make a motion to approve the FY 2024 local operating budget transfer for $125,000 from the 6 accounts noted to the local capital land and building account as presented.
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Dennis?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Thank you. And the last one is just a little one. This is a budget transfer request to fund some storage racks for string music instruments at the Parker Middle School for $3,107.
Make a motion to approve the FY 2024 local operating budget transfer for $3,107 from the one account noted to the Parker Middle School music supply account as presented.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Sorry, that beeping is,
And
yeah, I'm a little distracted. Sorry. Like it's my heartbeat, yeah. I apologize. Is there any further discussion?
No.
All right, that's a roll call vote. Dennis?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And
Thank
thanks,
you,
Joanna, for
Joanna.
putting that all together.
Thank you, Joanna, as always.
Yep.
Fifth and last item on the agenda for me tonight is just the personnel report for the month of September. And again, this just details all of your new hires, a couple of resignations, an assignment. It's the
It's the fire
the
alarm.
alarm system in the building's in a fault mode, and that's just
Oh,
beeping.
okay.
It's been looked at, it just needs a fix in the morning. New hires and a couple of assignment changes. Again, this is just the detail for our personnel transactions for the month of September. No action required, just letting you know. And that concludes, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that includes everything I have for tonight.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any liaison reports?
Well, I did go to the Parker McCarthy PTO meeting. They are doing exceptionally well. Dr. Parks presented what happened with their incredible days, and it was both at McCarthy and at Parker. And the other thing that he didn't say is they ended up fundraising net to each school, close to $25,000 each school. So that is amazing. There was a big, big thank you to the parents who came, volunteered, participated, to all the families, friends, and everyone who participated in the fundraising component of it. There was a big thank you to everyone as well. And going forward, that means that they have a lot of more flexibility in the pricing of anything that they run because of this. So that is terrific. They have Recycle Day coming up for McCarthy on November 4th, here at the Administrative Building parking lot, from 8 in the morning until 12 noon. And that also applies to Center, but I didn't go to their meeting yet.
Thank you. Is anybody else?
Yeah, I have Harrington PTO. Let everyone know that awning was installed over the entranceway into the fourth grade pods that had been a little delayed, but that's been done. They've got a big color run event that had to be rescheduled because of rain. That's going to happen in June. Picture Day is tomorrow. Trunk or Treat is coming up on October 29th, and that's where people can kind of sponsor decorating their back trunks, and kids can trick or treat from one car to another. I think, what is it called? The Battle of the Booze. And apparently I'm a judge. So, woohoo, I did not know that was part of my liaison responsibility, but I get to do that. They're having a Dine to Donate night coming up. It's hopefully going to be November 7th at the establishment. Waiting to confirm that, but if that gets approved, everyone go eat at the establishment that day and the money can go to Harrington. They're also going to have their winter store coming up December 2nd. Maria,
Yes,
you know that
yes.
you do often do something for that.
Yes.
And I like that they have an agreement with the National Honor Society students from the high school who come in to help the kids with that, to help the kids shop and to help them wrap up their
Do they still
gifts,
run it
which is
with
really nice.
Byam? They still run it with Byam?
I didn't hear that they run it with Byam. I do
Okay,
not
I wonder
know.
if they're doing it this year in conjunction
That part I
again.
do not know.
That's
We're
all.
also having a costume for a cause where people can wear their costumes to school on Halloween and they donate $1 and they're still working on what the cause will be, but it's a nice little way to have people just donate $1.
Thank you. Dennis?
No, I don't have any reports, just thank you to whoever updated the liaison assignments on the
You're welcome.
website.
Just as an aside, I sent out a communication to you. Jennifer Omeg was hired as our new Director of Communications and Media, and she's also going to be managing the website for us and helping with the announcements like Chris used to do. She started it yesterday, and she's already picked up quite well to updating the site for us. So we sent her a bunch of stuff that we were a little bit backlogged on, and she got it all done yesterday and today. Great.
Have we had the conversation about historical quotes and making sure they're accurate if we're going to put them on the website? Remember?
We haven't done that for
Yeah, they haven't.
over.
Well, I remember because they weren't accurate. Now you can do it. If somebody knew that, we'll look it up.
So, I do,
Yeah.
sorry. I have one final liaison report. I went to the pumpkin fair this past weekend. It was their 50th annual pumpkin fair at the South Row School.
Crazy.
It was incredibly well attended. Thank you to the PTO for maintaining a very long-standing tradition. Lots of pumpkins were sold. And also thank you to the parent volunteers because it's their biggest fundraiser for the school year, and it really involves like an all-hands-on-deck type of participation between the parents and the PTO members. So it was really just a terrific event. The weather was beautiful, and it was great to see the kids having so much fun. All right, do we have any action items or new items for upcoming agendas? I have one. Did we have exchange students? Remember we had exchange students come here last fall? Did we
Yes.
have any come this fall?
We did, but it was a
Smaller
small number, and they had combined with Wilmington Public Schools, so
Okay.
we only had about 4 students this year.
Okay, all right.
Is it the French or the Spanish?
It was the Spanish, so we were, there's no French exchange this year because that's a smaller exchange. I think one of the things we're looking into is maybe doing an every other year
Okay.
process, because even though, I know many students that want to do it again, but, these things come at a little bit of a cost, and,
Sure.
what every other year might be better for families, and also just for interest, drawing interest, so we only had 4 students this year.
Okay, great. I was just wondering, because we didn't get an update on that, and I know they've been here in the past, so thank you. All right, anybody else? All right, do we have anybody for second public comment?
We don't.
All right, then, do we have any emails that need to be read into the minutes? No. All right, then with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss collective bargaining issues and not return to regular session.
I second.
Okay, so roll call vote. Dennis?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Aye, okay, thank you. We'll adjourn and go into executive session. Thank you.